July 1st, 2020 meeting of the Rules and Policy Committee of the Tennessee Public Charter Schools Commission. And we're conducting this meeting virtually in accordance with the COVID-19 orders in place across the state. The agenda includes instructions for the public to listen to the meeting. This meeting will be archived on the web afterward and will be available via link on the Commission's website. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. I guess Andrea or Judy, would you please do a roll call?
Yes, good morning. This is Judy Spencer, and I'm going to call each commissioner by name. If you would announce present, I would appreciate it. Commissioner Hanson.
Present.
Commissioner Tucker.
Present.
Commissioner Patterson and Chair.
Present.
Thank you. We have 3 of 3 committee members in attendance. As 2 are required for a quorum, we have established a quorum.
Great, thank you. So today's agenda is a committee review of a number of policies and documents that the staff of the Commission and the Department of Education will edit and then bring to the full Commission for approval at a later date. So first, we have the Charter School Performance Framework that is going to be reviewed with the committee today in anticipation of the full Commission approval at the August 26-27 meeting. So Tess will be leading that discussion and identifying the minor changes in the existing performance framework in use at the State Board of Education and what this version planned for use by the Commission is. And as a reminder, the performance framework is a contractual element in existing charter contracts and will also be part of future contracts that the Commission may authorize. And then second, the public records request policy merely includes a minor name change, and we expect to bring this to the full Commission for approval on July 22nd. And Chanel Tyler, our General Counsel, will be leading this discussion and answering any questions that may arise. This isn't expected to take more than a few minutes, so if you need extra time for the performance framework, we'll have it. And before we move forward, we do need to approve the minutes prior to the meeting. So I hope everyone has had a chance to look at the meeting minutes from our May 28, 2020 meeting. Could I please have a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Wendy, so moved.
Second, Dave Hanson.
Great. The motion.
Thank you. Let's take a roll call, please. If commissioners would say aye, nay, or abstain in adopting the minutes. Commissioner Hanson?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
And Chair and Commissioner Patterson?
Aye.
Thank you. The minutes are adopted.
Great. So I do want us to move to the agenda, and hopefully everyone has the agenda, and I'll make sure to make reference to the agenda. Chanel Tyler, our General Counsel for the Commission, and Tess Stovall, State Board of Education, will lead us through the discussion of the school performance framework. And Tess has kindly prepared a couple of slides summarizing the key elements of the framework for us. And again, our current timeline is based on the full Commission approving the performance framework at our August 26-27 meeting. So Tess, I'll turn it over to you to start our review of the school performance framework.
Great, thank you so much. And I will go ahead and share the brief slides just so that you all know what I did here was take screenshots of the documents that have been shared previously with the Commission with the performance framework. I know it is a lengthy and dense document, and so I wanted to be able to give you all a visual of what we're talking about as we are just moving through the document. So as was stated earlier, the performance framework for the most part, and when I say most part, I mean 99%, mirrors the state board's current performance framework. Chanel went through and made minor changes, i.e. removing state board, inserting commission, removing logos for the state board. So there really are no substantive changes in the proposed performance framework. As mentioned as well, the performance framework is an exhibit to the charter agreements that are currently in place with the state board schools and will continue as they roll to the commission. So if there are any changes that the commission would like to make either before the August meeting or in the future, I did want to flag that would have to be a contract negotiation with your authorized charter schools. So first, I just wanted to ground us in the statutory requirements around a performance framework as we begin this discussion. So Tennessee Code Annotated 4913-143. And I will also, for context, mention this is a relatively recent addition to statute coming in 2017, requires each authorizer in the state to have performance-related provisions within a charter agreement. And they have to clearly set forth the academic and operational performance indicator measures and metrics that will guide the evaluation of each public charter school. A performance framework, as we've discussed over the last 6 months, is a national best practice and is also required under the state board's quality authorizing standards. So this authorizing standards state that performance standards enable schools and authorizers to know the outcomes for which authorizers will hold schools accountable, and they are the basis of school evaluation and should be incorporated in the charter agreement. So the state board's performance framework have 3 broad sections. Again, this is what in minor changes is being presented to the commission. It has an academic performance section, a financial performance section, and an organizational performance section. This mirrors most authorizers' performance frameworks and how they are built. So in developing this framework, the state board staff reviewed or consulted first the model performance framework that the National Association of Charter School Authorizers puts out, performance frameworks from other high quality authorizers across the nation, the Tennessee Department of Education School of Accountability System, as well as engaged in numerous conversations with the state board authorized charter schools. Since this framework was originally adopted in 2018, there have been updates that were approved by our charter schools based on feedback both from our schools and our staff, and as well as updates to the state's accountability system. So first, I'm going to give a high-level overview of the academic performance section. I will note that this section is the one that's most tailored to the context of the state of Tennessee when you're looking at the model performance framework that's put out by NACSA. The reason is that obviously state accountability varies widely. And so you will see that this is going to be the most tailored to what we are doing here in Tennessee and what assessments look like in Tennessee. So the first part of the academic performance framework is the most heavily weighted section of the academic performance framework, looking at overall student achievement. So for schools that would receive a letter grade from the Tennessee Department of Education, this letter grade would drive the rating in this section. This was an intentional choice that the state board staff made as it relates to the performance framework, because we recognize that schools would be driving towards the accountability that's set in the Tennessee Department's accountability system as it relates to letter grades. And we did not want the schools to be driving towards multiple goals. However, there will be some schools that do not receive a letter grade. So for example, if a school is in their first year of operation, they do not receive a letter grade. Therefore, we had to put into the performance framework the indicators that we would use for this section if they didn't receive a letter grade. And those are the Tennessee Ready Proficiency rates, the TVOS rates, chronic absenteeism rates, and the English language proficiency rates. These mirror all of the indicators that, when rolled up, give a school a letter grade. They are also weighted very similarly to how the Tennessee Department of Education weights the indicators in the letter grade. Again, we wanted to make sure that we were aligning as much as possible how a school in the future would be graded in the department's accountability system when we're looking at its first year of grading. I will note that this is an area that if in the future the Department of Education updates accountability, the commission will need to come back and review this section to make sure it aligns to the accountability system. I also will note that in the state board's current charter agreements, it states that we are allowed to make updates to the performance framework without kind of negotiation with our schools if it's based on the state's accountability system changing. So if we were to evolve the accountability system, the commission would be able to evolve its academic performance framework because of those accountability changes. The next section of the academic performance framework is comprised of about 30% of the overall rating for the academic performance section, and this is comparative performance. So in this section, we are looking at how a school is doing in their academic proficiency rates as it relates to their geographic LEA that they are located in. So if a school is located in Shelby County, we are comparing them to Shelby County's overall proficiency rates. In order to meet the standard here, a school would have to be within 5 percentage points plus or minus of a district's proficiency rate. We felt like this was an acknowledgement that there may be slightly differing populations of students attending an authorized charter school than the overall district, but also setting the expectation that at least from the state board's perspective, that we feel like a minimum bar of meeting the standard is to be within kind of shouting distance of the authorized, the geographic LEA that they're located in. If a school does not have T and Ready scores, so for example, if a school only has kindergarten and first grade, this section is not scored, and then we re-weight the other sections to make up the difference. And the final section of the academic performance is school culture. So in this section, it makes up 20% of the overall rating. We have suspension rate. And this is actually, we have broken it out by grade bands, elementary, middle, and high, because when we looked at the data that's available statewide on suspension rates, it does differ by grade bands, as you all are probably aware. Therefore, depending on the grade band a school serves, it's going to have different thresholds for meeting the standard. We also look at student attrition rate. This is a calculation that's really determining, are students moving out of a school? Are they leaving a school between October 1 of one year and October 1 of the following year? Really to determine, is the school a place that people want to stay? I will say that we do not take into account, we don't kind of factor out students who may be moving or, a kind of a variety of reasons for leaving. We have just taken a clean approach that if you leave, you're counted in that attrition rate. I know there are other authorizers that may take different approaches, but that is how we've interpreted that rating. And then the last part of school culture is looking at teacher retention. We know that not only is school culture a driver of student attrition, it can also be a driver for teacher attrition rate. And so this is something that the state board felt strongly of including here in the rating. So before I move on to the organizational and financial performance framework, I want to pause here for any questions or discussion on the academic pieces. Okay. So next we're going to move on to the financial performance framework section. This section and the organizational performance section mirror very closely to the model performance framework that is produced by the National Association of Charter School Authorizers. So in the financial performance framework area, on the screen here, it shows you the indicators and measures that are used to drive the financial performance of a school. The vast majority of these indicators come from each school's audit. So when the audit is turned into the authorizer, we then take it, analyze it via the data there to produce these measures. The only figure that does not come from the audit is 1C, enrollment variance. So this is saying, is a school's budgeted figure, so the way, if thinking about right now, July 1st, what are they budgeting for the 2021 school year? How many students are they budgeting for? As compared to how many students they are actually end up enrolling in terms of ADM. So that is one figure that internally we calculate. The rest of the figures are coming directly from the audit. I will also note that we have updated these measures just slightly from NACSA's performance framework in order to align to the government audit, which is the GASB audit, which is what charter schools in Tennessee use, rather than the financial accounting audit or the FASB audit, which is what the NACSA performance framework is based off of and what many other states' charter schools use. I, over the last year, have taken a deep dive into the difference between the GASB and the FASB, learned much more than I've ever wanted about those two. Again, there's only some minor tweaks here, but we did make sure and want to ensure that our framework fully aligns to the GASB audit to make it a fair measure of our schools. And I'll pause here for any questions on the financial framework. Okay, great. The last section of the performance framework is the organizational performance. Again, as I mentioned, this very closely mirrors the one that's in the model performance framework from NACSA. So here, this section I like to call the more qualitative section of the framework. So the data that's driving these indicators is gathered through routine monitoring, the monthly performance of the monthly reporting calendar, your site visits. And within this performance framework document, if you go into the actual PDF that was shared, there are additional specifics under each indicator about how we are measuring these indicators. We actually made revisions to this part of the framework in the last 3 years based on specific feedback from our authorized charter schools wanting to get more specific about how, for example, we are monitoring the measure around students with disabilities or English learner rights. So we have put more detail than is in the model performance framework from NACSA in this section so that our schools know how they're going to be graded, what we are looking for, and that there are no questions when the annual report comes out. And with that, I will pause for any questions and happy to turn it back over to the chair for any discussion on this, the performance framework in further detail.
Tess, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? This is Terrence. Before, and I know while folks are thinking of questions, I just want to remind the committee that in our orientation, we took a review of the academic or the school performance framework. And I think as we are considering feedback, we want to balance moving expeditiously with also giving our new executive director an opportunity to evaluate the school performance framework when he or she steps into the role, knowing that there may be an opportunity in the near future to make modifications, but we certainly want to make sure we have a framework in place so that we can move forward and get our organization and entity up and running. So I just wanted to flag that or remind this committee of historically what we've seen, and then also where things are going as we look forward as well.
I test. It's Dave
Parents.
Hansen. Go ahead, Wendy. You go first.
After you, Dave.
Tess, without going too far down the rabbit hole, I guess I was just curious as we're thinking about this, why for the school culture piece, was there a specific kind of thought process you all went down to think about like whether to make the student attrition and teacher retention pieces comparative versus the kind of local schools? And so you mentioned you had kind of chosen just to do it as an absolute, and I didn't know if you all had followed a certain thought process we should be thinking about, or whether there's anything else there.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I will say that for the student attrition rate, we looked at how other districts measure attrition. And so that's why we picked an October 1 to an October 1 date, knowing that there is a lot of volatility that is happening between, the start of school and October 1. We did not make it a comparative simply because we were concerned about access to data and whether or not we would have confidence in the data that we would be able to access regarding kind of the geographic location, enough that we could say we're going to be rating a school based on that. Because we manage the student information system and we are able to determine student attrition on our own based on our data, we felt most confident there. And I think similarly via the teacher retention rate, this is something that actually the state board and our executive director, Sarah Morrison, felt very strongly about because of the state board's role as it relates to teacher quality, teacher evaluation, educator prep, that we felt like it was important to include that rating in the school culture piece. I think that is a relatively unique rating when we look kind of nationwide. But again, when we think about comparative, it was a question of would we have confidence in the data that we were comparing it to such that we felt like we could rate a school. I will also say, you didn't ask this question, but I will say kind of one of the bigger conversations that the commission and its staff may want to have in the future, and the conversation we've had a lot with our authorized charter schools, is actually the comparative performance measure, and whether or not you may want to think about, do you compare an authorized charter school to its kind of the school surrounding it geographically, not necessarily the whole district? Do you look at more of a like student? There are different takes on the comparative performance measure. We kind of getting started off the ground felt like we wanted to take a simplistic approach and just saying we're going to compare you to the geographic location, the entire district, rather than kind of trying to piecemeal it together. But that's certainly, I think when you look nationwide, a conversation that a lot of authorizers are having is what is the appropriate measure around comparative performance.
Thank you for the color.
This is Wendy. I don't have a question. I just want to say I've watched Tess, you create this and do all the research and the national best practice and NACSA, and then develop, changes based on the feedback and from the school. So I think we're in my opinion, we're in a great place with this framework. And I agree with Terrence, once we have an ED on they may want to tweak it or not, but I feel like you've put us in a really strong position. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Tess, and thanks, Wendy and Dave, for your questions and comments. I'm really excited about the progress we've made and also where we are, to your point, Wendy, in the context of upholding a national best practice. If there aren't any other questions or comments, Chanel, would you lead us through the discussion of the public records request policy and rule? And assuming there are no issues, certainly we expect the full commission to approve on July 22nd, but will you lead us through that discussion?
Absolutely, and thank you, Tess, for your presentation. I'm sure the commission really appreciates that. So what I wanted to do, you've already seen the public records policy and the public records rule, but I wanted to bring them back up to your attention because there was a few little tweaks that I wanted to make, and just wanted to discuss those with you right now. So if you turn to the public records policy, this was approved on first and final reading at our April 22nd commission meeting, but we needed to revise it. So in the policy that was approved on that April 22nd meeting, there were a few items that need to be updated. One is the public records request email. It did not have a period in there, and these servers can't accommodate an email address without a period. And so that's really the largest change that you'll see to that policy. And as parents has already stated, we'll go ahead and try to get this policy approved, this revision approved at our July 22nd meeting. And then you'll see that there's also maybe a couple of other tweaks I added in, that it's in Nashville, Tennessee, just as far as the address and where people can come and try to view public records. And so that's really the only changes to the public records policy. And as Terrence said, we'll be trying to get these revisions approved at our July 22nd meeting. And then the next one you'll find is the public records rule. So you all have also seen this, and you approved it on first reading at the April 22nd meeting, but it hasn't already been set for a public, for a rulemaking hearing. We've been trying to kind of keep that on hold until you all have a place where people can come, a permanent place rather, where people can come and inspect records. It seems like that is moving along pretty quickly now, and now would be a good time for us to get some board action approval to go ahead forward with that rulemaking hearing. And as the public records policy, there were just a few tweaks on that as well. Again, adding that period to the public records request email. And then I've updated the address where people could come and view records to reflect the address that you all are anticipating to move into. So those were the only changes. There weren't really, I guess, substantive, just more so to clarify where people can request records. And then also, as Terrence said, I'll be asking at the July 22nd meeting for you all to approve us going forward with the rulemaking hearing. And that's all. I'll take any questions at this time if you have any.
This is when no questions, but thank you, Chanel, for your level of detail. It is much appreciated.
Thank you. Okay, Terrence, I don't think that we have any questions, so I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you, Chanel, and also thanks, Tess, for providing the overview. And also thank you to the committee members and the staff. I know everyone is putting in a lot of hard work and effort, especially in these difficult and ever evolving and challenging times. So thank you all. I do want to recognize any members that have any other remarks or closing remarks. We do have members of the commission with us today. Ms. Richards, I know I saw you joining us today, so thank you for being with us. But does anyone have any other remarks or any closing remarks? Okay, great. Well, again, the purpose of our meeting today was to review and provide comment in these two particular areas. And as noted by Chanel and also by Tess, that we'll be moving forward with the full commission for approval on both of these fronts. And again, thank you guys for doing so. With that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
This is Wendy, so moved. Sorry, I couldn't get off mute.
Second.
Okay,
Let me
great.
take
Yeah,
a quick roll call, Chairman. Could aye, nay, or abstain? Commissioner Hanson?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
Chair and Commissioner Patterson?
aye.
The motion passes. We're adjourned.
Okay, great. Thank you all. We'll see you at the next meeting.